Welcome back to another Swordmaster Publications presentation. My name is Ernie Lawrence, and tonight we're going to be studying Deuteronomy chapter 19. Deuteronomy chapter 19 is going to cover a few things that we've already seen before in earlier books, but here they are iterated again because Deuteronomy is the book that is the duty of the people as opposed to the priests. It's the last message that Moses is leaving to the people as a whole, and so we're going to cover a few more of those rules. We're going to get a little bit more in depth into some of them than we had before, and we'll understand things a little bit better, building on the foundation that we've already covered. So let's go ahead and get started. Deuteronomy chapter 19 and verse 1. When Jehovah your God has cut off the nations, whose land Jehovah your God giveth you, and you succeed them, and dwell in their cities and in their houses. Okay, so this is talking about specifically the nations in the land of promise, that when they go in and they've either killed everybody that's there or driven them out or all of the things, so that the land is completely empty of these other nations, these wicked nations, then God's saying, this is what I want you to do once you've cleaned it out. You shall separate 3 cities for you in the midst of your land, which Jehovah your God gives to you to possess it. You shall prepare you a way and divide the coast of your land, which Jehovah your God gives to you to inherit, into 3 parts, that every slayer may flee there. All right, now keep in mind, there's actually going to be 6 total cities. 3 of them are going to be on the west side of the Jordan, and 3 are going to be on the east side. West side is already where they're at. Remember, there was 3 tribes, or at least 2.5 tribes, that were going to be over on this side. That we're going to have those 3 cities, and they were very large in terms of their landmass. And then you have on the other side of the Jordan, we're going to be the rest of the tribes, and they were going to have their own 3 cities. So God's going to talk about both of those. But he says, once you've gone in and you've conquered everybody, I want you to set up these cities that somebody who kills some other person can flee there if they need to. In verse 4, says, and this is the case of the slayer, which shall flee there, that he may live. Whoever kills his neighbor ignorantly, whom he has not hated in times past. So in other words, it's not a premeditated thing. He didn't mean to kill him. It was an accident. We talk about the different ways that someone can kill somebody else that is not premeditated murder. There's a distinction that God makes, and our own laws make that same distinction. And so they're gonna, if you kill somebody accidentally, or it wasn't premeditated, didn't hate them beforehand, didn't lie in wait, then you had the opportunity to flee to one of these cities until your case could be heard. And so that's what God says. And when a man, and he's going to give an example here. He says, when a man goes into the wood with his neighbor to hew wood, and his hand fetcheth a stroke with the axe to cut down the tree, and the head slippeth from the helve, and lights upon his neighbor, that he die, he shall flee into one of these cities and live. So, just a perfect example. You're going out to chop wood with your buddy, and you go to chop down a tree, and the axe head slips off, flies right at your neighbor, kills him. You certainly did not intend to do that, and you have the opportunity to flee to one of these cities and live. Now, again, we come back to the avenger of blood, and this is the person who was a close family member, a male who would be seeking justice for the death of the person who was killed. And this person is going to hunt down the person that did the killing and bring them to justice, because it's a life for a life here. But it says in verse 6, lest the avenger of the blood pursue the slayer while his heart is hot. So, you killed my brother, or you killed my cousin, or you killed this person that was close to me. They're going to be angry, and they're going to pursue the killer. So, lest the avenger of the blood pursue the slayer while his heart is hot, and overtake him, because the way is long, and slay him, whereas he was not worthy of death, inasmuch as he did not hate him in times past. So this person is not worthy of death. He's not worthy of having vengeance brought down on him. But the avenger of blood, because of the death, will seek after this guy and potentially kill him. And so God says you're going to make these cities, these 6 cities, throughout the land that these people can flee to, and the avenger cannot take his life when he gets into these cities. Okay, so he says, "Wherefore I command you, saying, you shall separate 3 cities for you. And if Jehovah your God enlarge your coast, as he has sworn unto your fathers, and give you all the land which he promised to give unto your fathers, if you shall keep all these commandments to do them which I command you this day, to love Jehovah your God, and walk ever in his ways, then you shall add 3 cities more for you beside these 3. So in other words, once you've gone in and you've not only conquered the basic part and the initial places to where you're going to set up a camp, God's going to show you Jerusalem, and you're going to set up there, and that's where the tabernacle is going to go, and you're going to start by starting with these 3 cities. Well, once you've enlarged those coasts and you've gotten everything that God has promised to the fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, once you've got it all, you set up 3 more cities, because then because of the added land, you're going to need one to go to so that it's not too far away if someone were to accidentally kill somebody. Okay, so verse 10, and he says that innocent blood be not shed in your land. That's a big thing. God talks about that a lot. Do not shed innocent blood in your land. That's why he doesn't want them sacrificing children, because children have innocent blood. Whoever wants to talk about hereditary sin, and they talk about children being these evil little heathens and stuff, that is not how the Bible views children. They're innocent blood. And even here, talking about the person who has innocent blood, in this context, it is a person who did not mean to kill somebody else, did not murder them. Take a look at the 10 Commandments. That commandment there, thou shalt not kill. That commandment there is contextually and obviously the idea of murder, the premeditated murder, because here you have a guy who's killing somebody else, and he didn't mean to. He didn't want to kill the guy, but he has obviously killed. Same word, but he is not guilty of sin. God calls him innocent, and so God says you're going to put these 6 cities up that these guys can flee to, so that innocent blood is not shed in your land, because the avenger does not need to shed the innocent blood, which Jehovah your God gives you for an inheritance, and so blood be upon thee. So the blood of the innocent would be upon them. Now, go back to Matthew 23. What does Jesus tell them? The scribes and the Pharisees, the innocent blood that you have shed all the way back to the beginning until today is going to be on that generation. That's what he tells them. Because innocent blood was a big, big deal. It's not something that it's just mentioned here and it's mentioned there, and Jesus happens to mention it in Matthew 23. No, this is actually something that was a very, very central part, because ultimately Jesus was innocent blood. He was somebody who had no guilt of sin, just like a child, had no guilt of sin, and they slew him in their land. And what does he say? That that blood would be upon them. Well, the blood of the Savior was upon them. So this is all wrapped up together. We're not studying this in isolation here. Okay? So that's the innocent guy. But then he goes back and he reminds them, but if any man hate his neighbor, that word hate, that's a powerful word, because the word hate in the biblical text means that you despise, you do not like somebody so much that you are willing to kill them. The word hate is the precursor to murder. If you hate somebody, you have murder in your heart for that person. That's what the word hate means. And so I try not to use the word at all. I try to completely, not eradicate it from my vocabulary, but remove it from common usage at all. Because if I say I hate this or that, it cheapens the word. And if I say I hate this person or that person, I'm literally saying I want to murder that person. And I don't. There's nobody on this planet that I want to murder. There's nobody that I dislike that much. I would rather see even my biggest enemies converted to Christ. And that's what the Bible says we should do. But it says here, if any man hate his neighbor, and lie in wait for him, there's premeditated, and rise up against him and smite him mortally that he die, and he flees to one of these cities. So this is a murderer now, he's guilty. And he flees to one of these cities, and the elders of his city, not the sanctuary city, but of the original city, shall send and fetch him thence, deliver him into the hand of the avenger of blood, that he may die. So the elders of the city that the murderer is from can send word or send the avenger to the sanctuary city and say, this guy is guilty of murder, you need to release him to us. And then they deliver him into the hand of the avenger of blood so that he can be executed. And again, I want to bring out the importance of the personal manner in which death and execution was meted out. This is not some removed, faraway government thing handled, behind closed doors or anything like this. The Avenger of Blood was a close relative or good friend of the person who died, and they are the one that is going to seek out and take the life of the murderer personally, firsthand. And that's the way God wanted it done. Just like they said that the witnesses of somebody caught in adultery would be the ones to throw the stones and kill the people to bring the lesson home. This was a powerful message that God says these people are sinning, they're corrupting the people around them with their actions, and if they tolerate them and they don't do something about them, you end up looking like America. And that might come as a shock to a lot of people, but that's what's happened. We've tolerated and we've tolerated and we've tolerated, and we're so afraid of being labeled something and having somebody call us a bad name, homophobic or something along those lines, that we tolerate and accept the sin, and we don't purge our nation from it. And I'm not saying we should go out and stone homosexuals. That's not the point here. The point is that we have allowed that to become something that is acceptable culturally, and instead of using cultural pressures to either transform those people to get them the help they need because they need help, or remove them from our society. And everybody's like, oh, how dare you say that? How dare you say that? Well, that's what God was saying the Israelites should do. And he was far more forceful than what we should be under the New Testament. We call them to repentance, but what does 1 Corinthians 5 say? You deliver them, such a one, up to Satan. You disfellowship them, you remove them from yourselves. And, if we do that personally, if we are involved personally with that, then the lessons get reminded and reinforced. Our children see it and they know, hey, that's a wrong thing. I don't know how many times with shows these days or with books that I'm trying to read to my kids and stuff just from the library, where I'm having to teach, well, this character did this thing and that's not acceptable, even though the show makes it seem like it's right. Let's talk about why it's wrong. And it's a teaching moment for sure, but it's just so pervasive. Under the Old Testament, God said, you handle the purging of corruption personally and directly, and take it out. And in this case, they're dealing with murder. In the prior chapter, they were dealing with adultery, sexual immorality, and it continues on here. And you'll see this theme throughout the rest of Deuteronomy. And in the places where people are acting righteous and good, you will see that form of discipline and purifying of the nation handled correctly. And it's violent, because the message of sin and the import of sin is that it is ultimately violent. It kills the soul. It separates you from God. And no matter what we could possibly face here in this life, there's nothing that compares to spending an eternity separated from our Creator. Nothing. And this is the way that God brings that message home. So, it says in verse 13, your eye shall not pity him. You can't even feel sorry for the murderer. But you shall put away the guilt of innocent blood, the man that he killed, or the woman that he killed, from Israel, that it may go well with you. See, the execution, the death penalty, everybody that talks against the death penalty, it's so bad, it's so inhumane, and all of that nonsense. No, put that, the person who is a murderer, who took innocent life, if you remove them from your nation, God says it would go well with you. And I mean, we want to talk about the shedding of innocent blood. As far as I'm concerned, the people who commit abortions, the people that actually go in and kill the child, they're murderers. And we tolerate that. It's okay. It's just health care. It's just, whatever euphemism we want, other than you're murdering a child, you're murdering an unborn child or an unborn baby. And America's paying for that. God says that if you put away the guilt of innocent blood from Israel in this case, that it will go well with you. Then he transitions to a few other things here. Just 14 is its own law, and then moving back into witnesses, it says, verse 14, you shall not remove your neighbor's landmark, which they of old time have set in your inheritance, which you shall inherit in the land of Jehovah your God, in the land that Jehovah your God has given you to possess it. So when they came into the land, they would set up markers, these stone markers, to say, this is the land of this family. And that was what was used to mark off the land that would stay with the family for the next 1,500 years until Messiah came. And that land was what went back to the family. They had to sell it off for some reason or whatever. In the year of Jubilee, those markers determined what land went back to the family at that time. So this is not just a passing thing. This isn't, hey, the kids going out and stealing a roadwork sign to put in their room or some prank like that. This was serious. This was major serious, because this had to do with a land promise. And so God puts it into this theocratic law. It's not just an ordinance. It's not a bureaucracy thing. This was actually something God inspired to be written, because it was that important. Do not remove your neighbor's landmark. Okay? And then he kind of segues into, and I think there's a relationship here between these, and if you see somebody doing that, he puts that into their mind, because now he's talking about witnesses here. But then he says, one witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or for any sin, and any sin that he sins. At the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses shall the matter be established. So again, we come back to this idea that you can't have one witness, especially for the death penalty, but any sin. It says here, any sin. So one witness is not sufficient to establish that somebody's done something wrong. It's just not. It doesn't matter what it is. But God has already talked about that, even in the book of Deuteronomy. In fact, he talked about it not too long ago through Moses. But what he's gonna move into here is those who bear false witness. And this is killer, because we deal with false witnesses when we get to Christ and his trial. And the things that were brought up against him, those people should have been dealt with a certain way according to Jewish law. But we see that the Jewish state, the people who were in charge, not only did not keep the law by following what was supposed to happen to those false witnesses, they were the ones that set up the false witnesses in the first place. And so they absolutely are breaking the law of Moses left and right, back and forth, just all over the place. Okay? So verse 16, if a false witness rise up against any man to testify against him that which is wrong, then both the men between whom the controversy is shall stand before Jehovah. So that's the most important. You're going to stand before God, before the priest and the judges, which shall be in those days. And the judges shall make diligent inquisition. So they're going to research it, they're going to investigate. And behold, if the witness be a false witness, and have testified falsely against his brother, then you shall do unto him as he had thought to have done unto his brother. So shall you put the evil away from among you. So, a murderer. A murderer faces death. And so you accuse somebody of murder. And so an investigation is made, and it turns out that you were bearing false witness, that you lied. Well, your intention by saying that this guy's a murderer was to have him killed. So guess what? Your life is forfeit. Or if you say that somebody stole something, remember, if they stole, they had to reimburse and then do a percentage on top. I think it was 20% more on top, a fifth more on top of what they had to give back. So if they stole a cow, they had to give the fifth of the value of another cow on top of restoring the cow, or the value of the cow. So let's say, and I don't know what the values were, but you stole a cow that was worth 100 gold, you have to pay back 120 gold's worth, or a cow and 20 gold or something like that. And so the false witness would have to make that payment to the person that they bore false witness against, because of their lying. So whatever the false witness, whatever the punishment would be for whatever he's bearing false witness for, this false witness now has to pay that price, even up to the point of death. And what does God say the reason for this is? You shall put the evil away from among you. This is going on in our nation. Humans can't have original thought. We do not have the capacity to think up new things. Not anything that is absolutely new in a creative sense. We can mix and match, and we can put together things from what's already in existence, but we can't have new thoughts. Solomon talks about this in Ecclesiastes. There's nothing new under the sun. So this kind of stuff, this bearing of false witness, is something that is in every nation throughout the ages. And we see it a lot here in the accusations that are being made against certain people for certain acts, is that they can just make the accusation, and the accusation is enough to destroy the reputation of somebody. Even if the accusation is false. They just make the accusation, and that is sufficient. Oh, well, I can't believe that person did that thing. And it ruins them. It can send them to jail. You get enough people that are lying about it, that are bearing false witness in a court of law. You can have a person, a young man, sent to jail for years, and he can't get that time back. There's no way to get that time back. And the problem is that the people who make these accusations don't face any consequences in our law. If you accuse somebody of something, and it's usually done in the media rather than in not all the time in a court of law, although sometimes it is, but if you just go to the media, then what we call the trial of public opinion, you lie all day long. It's called slander, but people just don't face consequences for it, and it's destroying lives. In the Old Testament, if you bore false witness against somebody, whatever was gonna happen to the person you lied about happens to you instead. Kind of like that idea, because then people will stop lying about the things. And the worst part about it is, I think, not only are you destroying the life of somebody who didn't do what you were accusing them of, but you're also cheapening and weakening the capacity of a person who really did suffer that at the hands of somebody. They're going to be afraid to go forward because, well, this other person over here accused, and they said that they were a liar, and so they ended up in jail, and not me. They ended up facing consequences. They're not going to go forward. They're going to feel afraid to go forward, and what's going to end up happening is you enable the people who really are doing these evil things. and you make it easier for them because the people who are the actual victims don't want to come forward. And so God in his wisdom knows humanity. He knows how we think. He designed us. And so for God to say, hey, false witness has to bear the consequences that would have been intended for the person that he's lying about, I think that is a fantastic way of completely nipping in the bud this idea of wrecking somebody's reputation, trying to get them in trouble or whatever. And I think it's fantastic. Of course it is. It comes from God. Okay. And then listen to what he says here about that and the effect that it has, not on the person who bore false witness or the person that they bore false witness against, but everybody else. And those which remain shall hear and fear, and shall henceforth commit no more any such evil among you. You want to stop people lying and slandering and all that? You make them face the consequences of the person that they were lying about. Your eye shall not pity. Now, we use this verse and verses like it kind of out of context. This right here is your eye shall not pity, but life shall go for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. The context of this verse is not, if somebody cuts my hand off, I get to cut their hand off. The context of this verse is if somebody lies about what I've done, they accuse me of something I didn't do, then whatever they would have taken from me is taken from them instead. That's the context of this eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And so we need to understand that. All right, that's Deuteronomy chapter 19. Some more interesting stuff. It's hardcore. It's violent. It's serious stuff. There's nothing in this passage that we can laugh at or make light of. We're talking about crime and punishment here, and it's brutal, because sin was brutal, and the Israelites needed to understand how serious sin was, and that's why God presents it this way. So I look forward to your comments. Thank you for joining me for the study of Deuteronomy 19. My name is Ernie Lawrence, and this has been another Swordmaster Publications presentation, and we'll see you in chapter 20.